Welcome back to NRM 638, Python Scripting for ArcGIS Applications, Spring Semester 2015. This is an e-learning class at the University of Alaska, Fairbanks. From last time, we had a function that returned the day of year as an integer. So we can execute that Python function. So for example, the first record is 5 for the day of the year. The last record is 94 for the day of the year, which is the same thing as April 4th. What we're going to do in this session is work with something called global variables. And global variables in a function remember the values. So we're going to have to use a global variable if we want to, for example, calculate the number of days between records. So for example, there's 10 days between the 15th of January and the 5th of January. So what we would do is basically remember the previous record and then calculate for this record. It's 15 minus the previous record. So let's make a new field, and it'll be an integer field, and we'll call that number of days. Then we want to calculate the number of days as a function of the day of the year. So we right mouse click and go to field calculator, and we'll have a function, and we could name anything we want. And I called this function cumulative days. You could call it whatever you want, but basically it's going to have two inputs. So one input will be the object ID from the table, and then the second input will be the day of the year from the table. So the day of the year is this int field 3. And then the new statement is global. So global basically means remember that variable even after you exit the function. So we're going to remember this variable called first day. So if the object ID is equal to 1, we know it's the first record. We'll set days equal to 0, and then day of year becomes inside this variable first day. That's the value it will get. So the first time through the loop, days is going to be equal to 0. The next time we call the function, it remembers first day because that was the global variable. So for example, in the first time, first day will be set to 5. So days will be equal to the current day of year 15 minus first day, in this case will be 5. So it will return a value of 10 for this record. Okay, so then basically what we have to do is just use that function, properties, the fields tab, make object ID visible. And let's give int field 3 alias, so we'll call that day of year. So day of year as the alias. Okay, so then what we'll do is right mouse click and go to field calculator, and it's going to be function. Once again, cumulative days, object ID, day of year, and you could actually download this from the scripts folder week 2. It's called cumdays.cal as a field calculator. So you would download it and then just load it using the load button. So then what we're going to do is execute this function, cumdays, and then pass to it object ID and the day of the year, which is integer field 3 in this example. So then what will happen is the first time through, object ID is 1, so days is going to be equal to 0, and it will return a 0 for that record. The next time through, first day is going to be equal to 5, and object ID is going to be equal to 2, so days is going to be equal to 15 minus 5, or 10. And then just let's execute this function. So then we have the cumulative days between records. So between the first and second record, it was 10 days. Between the next record and the first record, it was 15 days. Between the last record and the first record, it was 89 days. So the key was when we ran this function, we had this global variable which remembers even after you exit the function, it does not disappear. Okay, so if you go to the Blackboard website, I have a quiz question for you that will lead you to the next video session.